Let's see if this works. I have no clue, since I've never done this before. Okay, that's on. Everything's a new experiment, right? Let's see. This looks not exactly right on my end. Wonder if that means it's gonna also not look right for other people. I don't know. We'll find out. Ba, 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 ba. Fill, face, stretch, fill. Nobody really cares about my face too much. I'll just put it way down there in the corner. Yeah, that looks kind of weird. What happens if I turn that off? Oh, that's much better. That's not, huh, okay. Edit, change. Let's see. Doesn't normally work. Enable this setting will display your mouse cursor. This will prevent Twitch from capturing other windows with a similar name. Okay. So let's see, there's my mouse. Okay. Oh, it does a weird thing at the top. That's cool. That might make it kind of weird to watch what I'm doing. Are you on the thing?
Yes, I'm on the thing.
It doesn't say you're on the thing.
It's acting weird for me.
Well, that's what I'm trying to figure out. It's acting weird. It doesn't. It says 0 viewers, but also it's doing this weird thing where it is not streaming this. It's not capturing it right. Well, that's a bummer. Let's see, maybe if I turn off all of these things that are supposed to make it better. See if that makes it better or worse. Save. Oh, what a bummer. Okay, that shows up. Bloop, 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 bloop. Okay. So those all, that shows up, but like the toolbar and like the mouse is like not showing up right. Okay, so I want the cursor on with that. Done. It's full screen, so that shouldn't be a problem. Maybe it's a problem because it's full screen. What if I make it not full screen? Oh. Well, now it's doing that, which it shouldn't be doing.
I'm not going to do this on my phone. It's doing weird shit on my phone.
I don't understand this at all. Okay, so if I hide this layer, so this share works fine, which is just sharing my second monitor. But if I tell it to share this, okay, maybe I need to change.
see mod mode. Did you make me not a mod anymore?
You're a mod. You should be a mod. Although, oh, you definitely should be a mod. The only thing I'm not sure of is if, I don't think I have to do that on each. I shouldn't need to do that on each thing I'm streaming from. Huh?
No, I figured it out.
Okay, so you are a mod?
Yeah, I'm in mod view.
Okay.
I'm just making sure.
Okay. What the heck?
I can see the little 3-point viewpoint. Like, so come here. As far as what you see.
Yeah, it has the little thing in the corner, right?
Right, yeah.
But like the rest is missing.
I wonder why.
I don't know.
Is there something proprietary about the software that they don't want you to look?
Well, that's what I'm trying to figure out, is if it's a software thing. I see you, but nothing on the big screen. Yeah. That's what I'm trying to... This white blank thing that you're seeing is actually the Fusion 360. But for some reason, it's not... Oh, see, it's like it's only capturing the middle of the screen.
It's taking... There, it popped up that circle.
Yeah, well, I turned something on in the middle to see if that would help. So, like, but like none of the toolbars and stuff show up.
Interesting.
It's very interesting. I don't know why it's doing that. Okay. Well, that's fine. Well,
at least you get to see it being made, right?
right? Yeah. So, so that, I mean, that's only part of what I was doing anyway. So, but first I was going to talk about some of the other stuff anyway. So I'll do that first, and then I'll switch back over to the other thing. So what I'm working on is, we'll pull this. It helps if I actually click on the real thing. Okay, so this is Sister Night, and we have the whole costume pretty much done now, and the rosary, and the only thing we have left is the police badge. And of course, it's not a real police badge. It's a made-up one for their version, their alternate history version of events. And so and you know, there's not any super good pictures. This is one of the best pictures actually that I can zoom in on. And so what I wanted to talk about a little bit is just what kind of the rabbit hole that I went into with this, because to me it's really interesting, just from a like prop maker perspective and things, and because it is alternate history. So what I started doing is first, like, I got as many reference pictures as I could from the show. So there's this one. This is another one that's basically the same picture but more zoomed in. But then there's this, which is not her badge. It's the police chief's badge, which is the closest thing that I could find that was like a close-up. So there's this, and then the other reference that I have that I dug out was this one, which again is very similar to the other picture. And so what's really interesting is, so I'm looking at these, right? And so of course the first place I started was, okay, well, let's go look up what the actual current and historical Tulsa Police Department badges are, because I assumed, incorrectly by the way, that they would have used that as a starting point, and well, that they would have used that and then just kind of tweaked it. So this is what the actual current Tulsa police badge looks like, which if you look at these side by side, you'll see that they are not at all, well, no, I shouldn't say not at all, but they are not quite the same. Obviously the shape is different. But what's interesting is that they did actually take some of the things from the actual Tulsa police badge. So that was helpful in starting going down this rabbit hole, right? So looking at this is the police chief's badge from the show. So looking at it, okay, so it has the outside is different, but the inside is very similar. It has this star with the field of stars, and then the stuff inside the star, which isn't exactly the same actually, which is part of what started me on the rabbit hole. And then it has this extra circle around it that has some text on here. And so I was searching for all these different things for the Watchmen Tulsa Police, and a bunch of people have made like patches and other things. And the funny thing is, so the thing that this says here, and I will get to what it says in a minute, but the thing that it says here on all the things that I've seen, like people have made patches and shirts, instead of it saying what it's supposed to say for the show, they put Justice for All, because on all of the pictures of the police with the patches on their arms, you can't read that text. So they just assumed, which is what I had assumed, is that it was just what is on the actual Tulsa police badge. But it's not. It's not the same text. So after lots of trying to figure this out and deciding that it was probably some sort of Latin, and lots of research, I figured out that it actually, what it says, and this is actually comes from the show, it's said in the show, the police chief says it during a speech, but it's actually, oh, where'd it go? Oh gosh, where is it? Oh, here it is. It says, Nos Costademus, I don't know, I don't speak Latin, but it's part of the whole Who Watches the Watchmen thing, and then, so that's it's part of that, and it's on their badges and everything. So that was kind of a cool little thing that I figured out. But then, so going back to the actual different badges, not that one, this one. Okay. So I decided, okay, so although they're not exactly the same, they share enough that this is based obviously off of the actual Tulsa police badge. So I went and tried to figure out, okay, what is this thing in the middle? Because I have no clue. And what I figured out is that it's actually the seal of the state of Oklahoma that's in the middle of their police badges, which makes perfect sense, right? And I was like, oh, yep, that is a match. That's exactly what it is. So then, of course, being me, I'm like, okay, so what is all this stuff that's on their seal? And what this is the, I forget the exact number of stars, but this is the stars for all of the states that were states before Oklahoma got statehood in 1907. So the star in the middle the big star in the middle represents their star that they got. I think there's like 42, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 45. They were the 46th state. I knew that. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then in this star, these 5 things that are in the points are the 5 seals of the 5 Native nations in Oklahoma. So I was like, oh, that's pretty cool that's on there. And then I went back and I looked at this to figure out what the difference was. And one thing that's kind of hard to tell from the screenshots that I could find out of this is I can't tell if they left those in or took them out, because it looks like there's maybe something there, which was either because they used something that was already had the seal and they eradicated them, or they left them in. But either way, what's the most interesting part to me is that what they replaced the middle of the seal with is this symbol, which is the one from just this corner. So of course, more research, and I came out with, oh, hey, what they actually used in the middle of the police badge is the seal of the Cherokee Nation. But like, there's no real mention of, such down the rabbit hole. But so they use the Cherokee Nation symbol, seal in the center of the badge, but there's no mention of the First Nations in the show at all. And so it's one of those things where, like, was it just a random thing where they were like, okay, of these 5 symbols, we're going to just replace one of them, and this one is the easiest, this one is the coolest, because it doesn't seem to have any actual meaning in the show itself. So I was like, okay, well, that's cool. Now I kind of figured out what the different symbols are, so now it's easier for me to actually recreate them because now I know what they actually look like. But then I ran into another problem, which is, this is how much of a rabbit hole I went in. So to get the actual, this is like the best picture I could get of the current Tulsa police badge. The way that I got this is because they don't actually have a good image of this anywhere available online. I got it from, and this is just kind of to illustrate the depths of research and like trying to find reference that I will go to. I got it off of this PDF, which is the Tulsa Police Internal Affairs Annual Report from 2013. So I don't even know why this came up in my search results, but I was like, oh, this PDF has this, a good shot that you can see the whole thing. Heather just walks in, laughs at me, and then walks back out of the room. But so then, okay, so like now I'm like, okay, cool, I'm set. I can, and of course, because I'm planning on 3D modeling this and printing it, so we have like a nice badge, right? So I'm like, okay, cool. I got all the symbology. I know what all the pieces are. I can like recreate this and make a 3D model of it, right? So I'm like, okay, I got everything. And then I go back and pull back up my reference of Sister Night. Oh, let's see, where's the other one? Yeah, this one. Right? And I go and I zoom in here and I go, oh, wait a minute. Hers is totally different. So, and looking at this, right, there's a couple of things that I realized kind of right away. So if you're looking at it as actually at a distance, it's kind of easier to tell. If you look, the center is like a totally different color than the rest, right? And the reason, and this is a lot of conjecture on my part, but the best I can tell is that, so they use the same base on here. I'm going to put it side by side with the other one. Oh, come on. So as best I can tell, they use the same, oh, where'd it go? Not that one. Where's the chief? There we go. Okay. So they use the same base, which is an actual metal badge. But then what they did, oh, that's not the one. Okay. So they use the same base. So it has the same stars and points and everything else. And it has the same outer circle. But then, because they knew that only the chief was going to get this close-up shot, or maybe they even did just from my experience, I know a lot of times like these close-up shots of props and things they'll do is like B takes like after production is even done. So they might have made this badge after the show was wrapped, or maybe they did it before or whatever, but because this was like a hero close-up prop shot, right? So the whole thing has to look nice and metal and like a real badge. Well, hers, and I even looked at like the other characters in the show that have badges like hers, theirs, because they never get shot close up, aren't 100% real metal badges. So looking at this, I'm like 99% sure that what they did is they hollowed out the middle, they printed the detail that they had changed, which the one on hers, if you look at these, isn't the same as his. So all that research I did to figure this out, it still has the Cherokee Nation seal in the middle, but it definitely has the other 5 nation symbols in there also. And hers actually says Great Seal of the State of Oklahoma with the 1907 at the bottom. So hers is actually, they took the whole seal as is, then they took the stars and the Nos Codemus text, put it around the current existing real seal of the state of Oklahoma, printed it on paper, and then put a clear resin like bubble over top of it. Because you can see, based on those highlights, right, the actual part of the badge is completely flat. And then it has this bubble over top of it. And I'm pretty sure, the reason I'm pretty sure that it was like a resin print is, again, if you scroll out, you can see this better, but it's not the same color because they printed a clear thing. And for anybody who's done anything with clear resin, if you're out in the sun with it a lot, like, I don't know, shooting a TV show out in the sun, it's going to discolor and get kind of amberish. So I'm pretty sure what they did is actually the same thing that I did with the symbol on her rosary that we made, which is I printed out the picture of St. Mary. I measured and 3D modeled and resin printed a clear cover for it, and then just glued it on there and then put it into the rosary to match the one that she has, because the one that she has, I couldn't find an actual real one that matched. So I'm pretty sure that's the same thing they did there. And so, of course, from being in the sun, over time, it discolored a little bit, and that's why it has the difference in the color. And like I said, if you zoom in and look, you can tell that it's not actually embossed in the metal like his badge. So, and I'm not going to tell you how many hours I spent to get to that point, because it was a lot. So, all that being said, so everything from the tip of the star down to this outer ring is the same, except, hers says detective versus his says chief. And then the inside is a little different. So, as always, as prop makers and things, we have to make the determination of, okay, am I going to just make it perfectly screen accurate? Which in this case would mean taking a shortcut and making it look not as good, honestly, in my opinion, as like the real chief badge. Or, do we go with making it what it should be? And so I'm kind of splitting the difference. So now back into the actual like 3D modeling software stuff. So I started this a while ago, and again, because of all of the different symbols and everything else, what I did was, I'm going to back up a little bit. So what I started with is, in Fusion 360, usually what I start with if I'm reproducing something that's real is I bring in a reference image to basically kind of draw over top of. So here's the police chief's badge, and then I overlaid that with the Tulsa Police Department badge, and I resized it. You can see that the scale on the two doesn't really line up, but I resized it so that the middle part, which is what I need, lines up with where it does on his badge. And then I also brought in, I turn this layer off, the Cherokee Nation seal, which again goes right there in the center on his. So I have all of those different layers in there. And then I started doing the actual design. So my goal is I was actually going to recreate the Chief's badge first, even though that's not the one we're making. Create all of the badge as is, and then once that's done, then I can swap out the middle piece with the one that matches hers and change the text, and the end result will be that I have both badges. And both badges as real badges, not as like a sort of faked one. So it'll match hers and his. I'll have both versions that match, but will be produced a little bit differently than the way that they produce theirs. And so, all right, so this is the part where it's going to be weird because I've never had anybody watch me do 3D modeling, especially not live on a stream.
I watch you all the time. You just don't realize.
Okay, well, you watch me silently from afar.
No, it's pretty much right over your shoulder.
Fair enough. So right now, I'm actually not. I was gonna say right now I'm in the sketch, but I'm not because I'm out of it. So everything I do in Fusion 360 pretty much starts with a sketch. I'll go back one more step. So when you put in a canvas like this, is what they call it, when you have a background image, there's a couple of things you can do, and I'll go in here to edit, but you can change the opacity, how it displays, where it's located. You can rotate things around, all that stuff to get it exactly where you want. Usually what I do is I just import it and leave all the default settings, and then I tweak it afterwards. But the most important thing, oh man, yeah, I'm gonna have to figure this out because this is just not gonna work. Because I'm talking about, it's gonna be really hard for me to talk about how to use things and the menu items when you can't actually see what they are. Because right here where the mouse is right now, is actually
like a whole bunch of toolbars,
is the side menu, and like I'm like, oh, click on this and do this, and you can't actually see what I'm doing. So over here on the side is what's called the browser, and it shows you kind of like the hierarchy of your pieces that are in your document, in your design. But let's see, if I at least hit calibrate, will it at least show the tool? Yeah, it's showing the tool. What?
Oh, I was just wondering if I forgot my question.
Okay, I'm just trying to make sure you guys can actually see what. Oh, and like the cursor isn't even in the right spot for what I'm doing. This is really weird. Okay, let's see what this looks like. I might have to just. So, at least it's putting the points in the right spot. Oh, and then it doesn't show the pop-up dialog. Oh, I'm gonna have to research.
It's like
Huh? It's showing you half of the tool. It's really weird.
If the menus are like transparency.
Yeah, maybe it's like some transparency issue with the menus. I'm gonna have to do some more research, but
Is it
So
Fusion
what?
360?
Yeah, Fusion 360. So it might also be like, because there's also, you know, a million different ways to stream, and I'm using Twitch Studio, which maybe Twitch Studio doesn't work with Fusion 360, but another, like, before I started using this, the last time on my other computer I was using OBS, which is another streaming software for using with Twitch. So maybe a different software would be better with the with Fusion 360. So this tool, the part you can't see. So when you bring in a canvas, you can calibrate it, and what that means is you're basically just scaling it to the right scale that you want. So, for instance, you pick 2 points. So in this case, I picked, you know, star to star, and what you can't see on the screen, unfortunately, is it has a little pop-up where you put in the value. So you can put it in inches, millimeters, centimeters, whatever you want. That's one thing that Fusion 360 is really cool about, is you can set what your units of measure are for your particular thing. You can set it to millimeters or inches. It defaults to millimeters. So you set it to whatever you prefer, and then everything displays that way. But anytime where you're setting a dimension, like if you're saying how long you want something, how big you want a rectangle, whatever it is, when you're typing in the dialog box, you can type in, like, if I have it, because right now this is set to millimeters, but let's say I know this is exactly 4 inches wide or whatever. I don't know what it is. It's already calibrated, so I'm not going to actually change it. But let's say it's 4 inches wide. Even if I'm on millimeters, if I type 4 space IN and hit enter, it understands that I want inches, and it automatically converts it to millimeters for you, like on the fly, so you don't have to do it yourself. So that's pretty cool. Because I'm American, I tend to think in inches, but when it comes to, you know, everything else, like, I feel like when I'm 3D modeling something, it should be in millimeters. And so I usually have my Fusion 360, my default is set to millimeters, but then unless it's something where I specifically know a dimension or something in millimeters, I'll type it in inches, and then it just converts it for me, so I don't have to worry about it. So it's kind of cool. So you can calibrate it right in the software, and then it'll resize it. I'll actually show you what it looks like, and then I'll put it back. So I'm going to type in 5 inches and hit enter. And boop, there you go. So it scales that to whatever dimension you say, and then you can go from there and then, you know, do your drawing over top of it. Like I said, I'm not going to actually change it. But so that's what I did. I scaled it, and then I scaled the other ones over top of it so they all fit that, but so that this is the right actual size. And then, of course, so when I start doing the sketch, and we'll see how this goes, and I might call this early depending on how this goes, but what I do is I start with the basic shapes. And so I did all the different circles, and one of the things I do is, because a screenshot or a reference image is never like exactly perfectly flat in a line, like if you look, right, like this line and this line are they're not perfectly parallel because it wasn't shot like directly straight on. And so a lot of times I'll kind of round things. And so you can actually see on these circles here, on all these circles, it has the diameter dimension. So you can see, which is actually kind of nice because you can also like click on this, which you don't see it pop up, but you can click on the dimension and it pops up a dialog box and you can change the dimension and it'll resize it. But so what I'll do, and what I did here, is you can kind of see like these aren't perfect circles on the background image. You can see that like this kind of goes outside of my line and then comes back in on this side. And so since I know that the background image I'm drawing on isn't like 100% perfectly symmetrical, but the thing should be, when I'm doing this, so like I'll draw a circle, and like for example on this inside circle, it probably wasn't, if I had done it exactly to the background image, it wouldn't have been 20 millimeters. But so I drew it, and I was probably like, oh, it's like 20.23, and so I made it 20. Like I'll round things up to make them even so that they make more sense. So this is 20, this one is 35, this one is 38. So like I made the spacing like even round numbers just because I have to do that in my head. I don't like things to be just like randomly off. So yeah, so like if it was 20.23 and 38.17, no, I would. So I started out with the basic shapes. I did the circles, and then one thing that's really cool about Fusion 360 is you can do patterns, and you can do patterns both on a sketch and when you're modeling things. So in this case, And this is where I left off. But so I have this shape for the star, and obviously there are more than one point on the star, but it doesn't make sense to, once I figured out one, to remodel each one all the way around to try to get them all perfectly lined up. So what I can do is, at least the selection tool works. So I'm going to select all the pieces that make up the point of the star. Bloop. And then, oh, I don't want it to. Okay, I'm going to start over. I don't know why I dragged, because when I dragged it grabbed all my guidelines and some other stuff. So it's just these points of the star, right? So here's the pieces, and then I can go up to create in the menu, which you can't see. Yeah, this is just not going to work.
It looks like there might be a plugin for it, but I can't.
A plugin for Fusion 360 or a plugin for, oh, okay, to make it so that you can do it?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll look into it some more. I'm going to just do this circular pattern thing, and then I'll probably just stop for tonight until I do more research on this. So what's weird is because like I opened it up and was just playing with it. And I was like, oh yeah, like it's showing it, but I didn't realize like I didn't pay enough attention when I was testing it to see that like only certain things weren't working, which is just bizarre. But so you pick circular pattern, and then what you can do is you pick a center point, which is what I'm clicking on the menu you can't see. But since obviously this is a circle, it kind of makes it easy in this case. So this is my center point. And then this line that goes around is showing you, oh, you can kind of see there. So right now, the center tool always defaults to 3 iterations, which includes your base that you're copying. So right now it defaults to 3. And you can say whether you want a full rotation. You can also do an angle, so you can say like, oh, copy this 90 degrees or 120 degrees. So if you don't want something to actually go in a full circle, you can do that. Like I'm going to change this to angle, and so by angle, when I set it to angle, it defaulted to 180 degrees. So you can see what it did is it said, okay, I'm only going to go 180 degrees, and then I'm going to distribute evenly the 3 points around 180 degrees, which obviously in this case is not what I want. And you can also do symmetric. So this is symmetric 180 degrees, and so it goes both ways instead of in a circle. So you can get a lot of functionality and creativity out of like repeating your designs using that. There's also a rectangular pattern that I use a ton of the time too, for when you want to lay stuff out like in a grid, or not even necessarily a grid, because you can like stagger things, and you can adjust the vertical and horizontal repeat independently of each other. So you can get pretty detailed with that. But I'm going to go back to full. And obviously there are 6 of these, so I'm going to go to 6. The nice thing about this too is it's a standard repetition pattern. It's not like uneven or anything. So as you can see, I hit 6 and it spaces it perfectly for what I need, so I hit OK. And then, bam, they're there. So I'm going to undo that, because I talked a lot, and it made it seem like the tool was maybe not as easy as it is. But this is just, so I'm going to do it over from scratch. So hit pattern, center point, full, 6. OK, done. That's how easy it is to make a pattern like that and repeat it. So now I have the whole outside pattern. The next step that I'm going to do is I need to figure out there's 2 things that I'm going to do next. Next, I have to figure out this pattern that goes inside here, which is a little bit trickier because it's this weird flowery shape that's different than any other police badges I could find. I'm not sure where it came from because it doesn't match any of the actual Tulsa ones. The other thing that I thought would be easy to do in Fusion 360 that isn't, apparently, based on everything I read, is this text that curves around here, the Tulsa police, and then the Nos Custodemus that's on the bottom, and then the chief and detective down here. Although there are text tools in Fusion 360, like I can go in here and, 15, and I can say Tulsa Police, and I can change the font, and I can, rotate this and everything else. The thing that you can't do And I don't know why not, and I did lots of research. The thing that you can't do in Fusion 360 is actually curve text like around a path. So I can't make curved text in Fusion 360. And I did a lot of searching, and usually if there's something that you can do in Fusion 360, the Autodesk has tons of great info in the forums, and if you can do something, somebody in there will have already asked, and 5 people will have already answered on how to do it. And the way that I would normally do it is basically what everybody says, which is do it in a program like Illustrator, which it's easy. It's like so easy to do in Illustrator, and I've done it a million times before. So in Illustrator, at least, it's really easy. If you don't have Illustrator, you're using something like Inkscape. I don't know how easy it is in Inkscape because I've barely ever used Inkscape. But so you would make your... I hate having to do pieces in Illustrator only because if you have to make any changes, then you have to like go back and make the changes in Illustrator, then re-import it and change it and everything, which is kind of annoying. But it is what it is. So what I'll need to do is basically I'll like go in here and say, okay, this circle is the one that is this one, I think, that's 27 millimeters. So I'll have to go and make a 27 millimeter circle in Illustrator, curve the text around it, and then you can go in and you can't see the menu, but you can insert an SVG into Fusion 360. So a lot of times, this is actually doing the design straight in Fusion 360 is not necessarily what I usually do. It's kind of a... it depends on what exactly I'm doing and how easy it is for me to do those particular shapes, whether I do it in Illustrator and then import it, or I just do it directly in Fusion 360. For this, because it's a lot of just regular shapes, the circles, the stars, that I'll do directly in Fusion 360 like I'm doing now. If there's something with a lot of curves, although Fusion 360 has some decent tools for making like splines and controlling splines and shapes, at least for me, because I've been using Illustrator for like, I don't know, 20 years, 15 years, the tools in Illustrator, I at least know how to use them better to get like the exact shapes that I want. And although Fusion 360 has a lot of the same tools, they don't work exactly the same, and so I find it harder to get sometimes to get like particular shapes that I want. And so a lot of times I know most of the time if I'm looking at something, I'll be like, I know I can't get that shape directly in Fusion 360, so I'm going to do that in Illustrator first and then import it. But like I said, the problem with that is then if you need to make a change, you have to go back a step, change it, re-import it, and redo it. And before I stop, I'm gonna show real quick why and just how much of a pain that can be sometimes, because I think that's kind of important. So I'm gonna show a really simple example. So one of the things that's really cool about Fusion 360 is that it does what, let me see, I'm gonna get the exact term that they use. Let's see, I'm in the preferences, but you can't see it, haha. Yeah. It's called it doesn't matter because I was just looking up a name, so I can be like, I didn't even have to tell you I was looking it up. I could have just looked it up and pretended like I knew what I was talking about the whole time, and you wouldn't even have known.
You just outed yourself.
I know. But it's called Parametric Modeling, which basically means that everything that you do is live, and any changes you make in history, which you can't see it. So at the very bottom of Fusion 360, there's a history timeline. And so you can go back and it'll go forever. Of course, the more history you have, the potentially more it'll bog down your computer. But you can go back to any point in history on the history bar and make a change. And if that change doesn't break something, it'll cascade through and update your model. So like you could be 100 steps down the line and go like, oh, you know what? I actually need to change that by a millimeter. That second thing that I did, you can go and change that and hit save, and it'll update and cascade through. Now, if it's a lot of stuff and it's something that enough other steps are built off of, sometimes like you'll go and be like, I just need to change this one little thing, and then you'll break everything and be like, oh, undo, which I've done. But just as a really quick, easy example, so I'm going to just extrude this one circle. I'm just gonna make it 5 millimeters thick. So, I mean, this is just something really simple, but I want to illustrate how important it is sometimes to have done everything in here directly, where you don't have to go back out of the software. So when you import like an SVG from Illustrator, you can still modify it almost like you can modify a sketch that you made directly in here, except for some instances. So like one good example is if I made that curved text in Illustrator and then I decided that I needed to change like the font spacing, or if there was, let's say, something stupid like a typo that I needed to fix, whatever, I would have to go all the way back to Illustrator and change it and then re-import it. And then I would lose the ability to do what I'm about to do. So here's a good example, right, where I made this circle and I extruded the circle out, and then, I do a bunch of other things. Actually, let's do a couple of things. I'm going to also extrude this other circle just so I have a couple of different pieces on the screen that you can see. So I have these two pieces, right? And let's say I realize that I didn't size this circle right. So I'm going to go in here and let's see, which one is it? This is, actually I'm going to change this one because I know which diameter that one is. So I'm going to change this to 15 millimeters instead. And then I'm going to hit save and bam, the circle's a different size. It's literally that simple and that straightforward for making a change like that. But if I had, going back, if the part that I was needing to change was that I had imported that and then extruded the Tulsa police text, and I needed to change that, I would have to delete that whole step, put in the new SVG file, extrude the letters again, and change it. So like in that case, the things that I know that I'm going to have to do in Illustrator, I will do those at the very end as probably one of the last things I do, just so that way if I do have to tweak it or change it after I'm done in Illustrator, I will have the least amount of impact possible on everything else that I'm doing. The bright side, at least, though, is that I can model and do the entire badge and then come in at the very end and then just take that SVG file. When you're doing an SVG or even a sketch like I was doing down here, right now this sketch is just on the ground plane, but you can actually apply an SVG or a sketch onto a model as the starting point. And so what I'll do is I'll do this whole badge and then I'll actually import the SVG and put it right on top of that layer once the whole badge is done. So I'll just import it, put it on there, select the letters, and then extrude them out onto, I'll actually just do it for pretend. So let's say I put I'm going to pretend that I am putting the SVG on this, but I'm just going to really add a sketch on to the top of this. And then I'm going to add text, and I'm going to just put Tulsa on here. Oh, it's upside down. Beep. Okay, there we go. And I'm going to make these letters 5 millimeters high. I'm going to go smaller than that. Let's go with 3. That's fine. And we'll make it bold just so it kind of looks like it's supposed to. So I'm going to do that. So let's pretend I imported that and I put it on there. And then I just select those letters and, oh, I have to finish this. So now, if I look at it from the side, you can see that sketch is actually on top of the model, not down below. So now that I have those on there, I can just select those letters, go extrude, and then the menu that popped up that you can't see, I'm going to say -1 millimeter, that negative 1 millimeters, and you can see because when I am extruding it right now, I'm telling it to go through, it defaults to a cut, and you can change whether it's a cut or a join or a new body or an intersect. There's a bunch of different options for when you're extruding, but I'm going to just leave it as the default. You can see if it's a cut, it shows you with this red transparency kind of where it will actually cut the other object, which is pretty cool. So I hit OK. And then bam, so there's the letters. So just to give you an idea of what it would look like, and how that works. But so I'll have an SVG that I'll put on top of the badge that'll follow the curve with the text that's in the right font, because this isn't the right font. This is just Arial, which is what it defaulted to. And then I'll just cut that out at the very last step from the top of all that stuff. Yeah. That's a pretty janky looking badge right now. This is the $5 version that you get from Wish. I'm glad you find my humor humorous.
It's one of the reasons I married you.
And now I'm just, one of the other things that's really cool is like it has so many levels of undo. I'm just undoing like. I went all the way back to where I started before we even did that. So I'm going to put that back. So there you go. That's where I'm going to stop for now with the model. But yeah, so I definitely went down a super duper rabbit hole on this. And like I said, I'm not even done yet, right? So, yeah, I go down lots of rabbit holes when I'm researching stuff, especially if it's something that's really like interesting and weird. Like I said, I mean, going back to, I'm going to go back to this real quick. Oh, come on, go back. Oh, there we go. So going back to this, like, it's so, like, aside from even just working on the actual costume and everything, there's so much stuff that you can get into and like go down the rabbit hole just on like the symbology on all this stuff that has nothing to do with the actual show, right? But like so that's like I started reading about like just Oklahoma in general and like the Five Nations and all these different seals and stuff, and like you think about like today and think about like I can't even imagine, like it's hard for me to imagine Oklahoma even acknowledging the 5 tribes on their seal. Like I feel like, I mean, other than the Supreme Court forcing them to recently, like I feel like today, like people would be like, no, hell no, that isn't going on our state seal.
Oddly, Oklahoma is one of those states, because I lived in Arkansas, like right on the border between Oklahoma and Missouri, and Oklahoma, surprisingly, is very loyal to its Indian culture, or Native American culture, I should say.
Yeah,
like they're very loyal to them. They don't. Like, most of the community members are not jerks, as far as I remember.
Right, but I'm talking about, like, it's one of those things that, like, is surprising to think about that they did that in 1907. When, I mean, the whole point of Watchmen is that in
It might have been an empty gesture. Who knows?
Well, I mean, we've done lots of those.
I mean, the 5 tribes might be on there as an appropriation of they're actually ours, not yours. I don't know.
Right. I mean, it's just it's weird to like look at this and think like, okay, so you know, we had the Tulsa massacre in 1921, but yet 15 years before that they put the 5 tribe seals on their state seal. Like, it's weird to me.
It is. I agree with you.
You would think like they would want to try to, like, I would be less surprised if like they had just erased it completely from the history like they try to do with so many other things, you know. Yeah. Anyway, a little sidetrack there. Even the middle part of the seal of Oklahoma is, you know, this native and some, you know, colonizer shaking hands. Really bizarre. One of the other things that's also interesting is, and I didn't actually get into this, but these are both the Cherokee Nation seal, They both have the same date, and the star is inverted between the two. Which again, like, I don't know if there's, and even on, if you look at the state seal, right, this one has it with the point going down, and this one, which is the current Tulsa Police Department, it's pointing up. And so, yeah, so I don't know, there's so many different, and the thing is, just like everything else, there's, if you look at this was a vector image of this that I found, but there's, you know, like anything else, like over the years, they like update it here and there, and like there's like full color ones, and, you know, it depends on what the use is. So these all change a little bit over time. Like if you, I don't know if you can, there's like small changes even between, oh, not that one, like between on all the other ones too. Like, I'm actually gonna put these side by side just because I think it's kind of fascinating. But yeah, so like, you know, they're all a little bit different, and like in this case, it's because they had to make this something that would actually be somewhat identifiable at embossed in metal versus one that's line art versus, where'd the other one go? Nope. Not that one. Like I said, I have lots of different reference. But anyway, so like all of those things are like slightly different. And then, oh yeah, I was gonna say, if you look at the police chief badge, right? They put the Cherokee Nation seal in the middle, and it also has it with it going down, which is the opposite of what the current Tulsa police badge is. And then, you know, again, like this is a full color one versus the other one, but yeah, the star going up versus down, and I couldn't find anything that said like one way is right and one way is wrong, or which way it's supposed to be, because there's just as many references of it up versus down. So anyway, that concludes my
welcome. Thank you for doing me for a TED Talk.
very terrible. Oh, I actually turned off my face. That's what I did by accident. Well, whatever. Nobody wants to see that. I wonder if I'm gonna try something real quick before we actually stop. That has to do with this Fusion 360 thing, because I'm really. Let's see. This is probably not going to be a good idea. Hold on, I'm gonna hit cancel. Let me move this over here.
Oh my god.
Oh, that's even worse. Okay, I'm gonna stop that for a second. You're gonna see the background in just my face. Now, what I'm gonna do is, okay, can I change this to? Oh, look at that. Now it shows up.
Hey, what'd you do?
Well, so what I remembered that, well, I intentionally didn't do this originally, but you can tell it, because you can tell it to like only show an application, or you can tell it to show the whole screen, which I was trying to avoid, because then you have like my whole toolbar and anything else that happened to pop up, or like when I'm because like sometimes even when I'm showing something, like I'm trying to switch back and forth between things, so you don't see those because they're behind what I'm doing, or behind, like they're not behind the application, but when I click on it, like if I click on this, right, it comes up in front of the 3D program. But so I left it on just streaming the program, because if I have it just streaming the program, I can click on something and you'll still see what's on that screen versus the other thing coming in front of it. But apparently if I say share the whole screen, all of the toolbars and everything show up. So that's great. Well, now I know for next time. Oh, yep, see, then the dialog boxes pop up. So that's what I was talking about, where you can change the dimensions on something. And here's where you can go Calibrate Canvas, and then you can draw 2 points, and then it shows you the dialog box to change it. So those are the two big things that I mentioned that you couldn't see. But yeah, here's the toolbar up here that you couldn't see before. Oh, and the other thing, now I'm really going to get rid of my face because you can't actually... why is this... Oh. Oh. Get rid of my face, yeah. So here's the history thing that I was talking about. The history bar. So right now there's not much on there because I undid all the stuff that I did. But here's the history bar where you can go... You can actually... And the other thing that's cool is not only for... making modifications, but just if you are trying, sometimes, especially when you have a bunch of stuff and you're trying to find a particular thing, you can actually go back in time. So like I can say roll history marker here, and so you can kind of roll backwards and forwards in time and see what things changed, or try to find where you made a particular change. And you can also, when you're doing that, so like if I go here, you can actually click on the thing after where you've rolled to, and you can delete everything. So if you have like a whole bunch of changes you made and you decide you didn't like them, you can move the history bar to figure out exactly where you want to be, and then delete everything afterwards, which is especially good if you've made a bunch of, because although it does have a lot of undo and redo capability, if you've made a bunch of changes and saved and left the program, when you go back in, obviously you can't undo what you did. But so it gives you an extra opportunity to be able to go back and undo stuff. So that part's cool. I'll put this back, and I'm going to save that. And for anybody who actually stayed this long, I'm going to give you a little sneak preview of something that I'm making. So this is, I mean, it's probably pretty obvious what it's from for anybody watching. But what this is it's the top of a soap dish tray. Like all the 3D models of soap dishes were just like grids or whatever shapes, and I was like, I want a special soap dish thing. So I made a Hyrule soap dish tray. I figure that's enough holes for the drip. This goes inside like a little tray thing, a drip tray. So this is where your bar of soap would sit, and then the cutouts is where the soap and airflow would dry your soap and keep it from getting all nasty. Cool. Oh, let me see. I'll show you what the actual dish part looks like too. Turn that going over here, and so this I actually got off of Thingiverse because why not? So this came off of Thingiverse, and then I made my own tray to go on top based on the dimensions that it has. So it's pretty cool. So it has like these little ridges. So the tray sits and nests in there, and then so it sits on here, and then whoa, what are you doing, computer? Knock it off. So yeah, so it just sits right in here. So that's where this will be. This will fit just right inside there. And then you set this like on the edge of your sink or your bathtub or whatever, and so any water or whatever that drips just pours right out. Good to go. No, I don't need to save that. All right, cool. Oh, I turned my face off. I'll put it back on so I can say goodbye. Thanks for coming, and sorry that didn't work out like I thought, but hey, you know, the first time doing anything is never perfect, and that's okay. But now I know, and I will have it set up better for the next time I do this, and I will actually do some 3D modeling, not just showing some sketches. I have lots of different 3D models that are in the works, so there's lots to talk about and look at and discuss, and different methodologies and things. Oh, I'll show you guys one more thing. I talked about this on stream the other day, which is the Sheikah slate that I'm going to make for my daughter that her tablet can go in. So this is actually a perfect example of, although I'm not making a 3D model of this, if I were going to, this is definitely one where I would have started in Illustrator. So this is Illustrator, and this is a picture of the model from the actual game. And so because it has all of these shapes and everything on here, I could do all of this directly in Fusion 360, but a lot of these shapes are much easier to get if you want in Illustrator than they are in Fusion 360, in my opinion. But yeah, so I just started doing this earlier, but so I have kind of all this. The difference with this though is that I didn't even scale this at all. I'm just doing it directly on here. And then once I have it all designed out, I also have, let's see, where did I put it? I have, where did I put it? Sheikah Slate. No. Oh, I know where I put it. Oh, that's why I couldn't find it. I closed all this stuff so you guys wouldn't have to look through all my junk, and then I couldn't find it when I was all done. So this is actually kind of a fun tip too anyway, but so we have these rulers that are these clear, like there's some sort of acrylic or polycarbonate or something. But they're these grid rulers that we use for like sewing and stuff. But what they're actually really good for too is if you draw something out, and this is the paper, this is just like butcher paper, and I traced Hazel's tablet. And then I laid this over top of it and took a picture of it, and so I can get like pretty exact dimensions. I mean, for what I need, this is exact enough. But to get the dimensions and stuff for her tablet, which are not the same as Link's actual Sheikah Slate. So for this, I'm going to design this all out so I have all the components, and then I'm going to take the size for that and then rescale it to fit around her tablet once I have all the design done. So yeah, that's that. Cool. Well, thanks for coming, and I am going to be done for now. So I will say goodbye. Have a good night. Have a good weekend. Oh, I am going to stream tomorrow night, maybe tomorrow during the day too, I don't know, in the shop just to like hang out and doing stuff. So come by again tomorrow. All right, cool. Bye.